The night was dressed up like a fairy tale, all sparkling chandeliers and polished champagne flutes. 100 voices buzzed with congratulations as my sister stood center stage, basking in the glow of a future they said she'd earned.
But my seat?
They pointed me to the public table, shoved back against a cold marble column, surrounded by strangers picking at stale rolls. My brother-in-law's grin was a blade. Only important guests sit with the family. My name is Rachel, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever been reminded you were disposable, right in front of the people who should have protected you? I tried to laugh it off, swallowing the burn in my chest, but then I saw the empty place setting. Everyone else had a plate, a glass, a name card. Not me. My sister, resplendent in her white dress, glanced over with a shrug that cut deeper than any knife. Guess you're not that important. Something inside me shattered. I'd spent years cheering her on, helping with applications, driving her to interviews, patching up her self-doubt with my own dreams. And now, she couldn't spare me a plate. The band started to play. Laughter sparkled around the tables like poison-laced confetti. I felt myself shrinking, suffocating.
No.
Not tonight. I stood, smoothing the hem of my dress, my heartbeat like war drums. Reached for the tiny gift bag I'd brought, a vintage bracelet I'd saved for months to buy, a piece of our grandmother's memory, meant for her. I clutched it so tight my knuckles went white. Then I stepped forward, loud enough for everyone to hear, voice steady as a blade. Then I'm leaving. The music stuttered, a record scratch across the perfect scene. Glasses paused mid-toast. My sister's mouth fell open, a tremor flashing across her carefully curated smile. I watched her freeze, the moment hanging between us like a noose. And for the first time in my life, I didn't apologize for taking up space. I turned, gift in hand, and walked out of their perfect celebration, leaving their cold, fragile version of family behind me. Because I would rather stand alone than beg to belong. The night air outside bit through my thin dress, but it felt cleaner than anything inside that hall of hollow applause. I clutched the velvet gift bag, breathing like I'd just clawed my way out of a cage. Behind me, the doors swung shut, swallowing the violin music, the empty chatter, the smug faces who had decided I wasn't worthy of a plate. I kept walking. My heels echoed across the pavement like a war cry, each step a promise that I would not crawl for scraps of love ever again. I reached the parking lot, tears threatening to spill, but I forced them back.
No.
Not tonight. There would be no tears for people who left me hungry at their celebration. My phone buzzed in my purse. A message from my sister. Where did you go? You're embarrassing me. My laugh felt jagged, almost savage. Embarrassing you? I typed back. You made sure I wasn't even fed. Enjoy your night. No reply came. I stared at that gift bag, the vintage bracelet I'd once imagined she'd wear on her wedding day, something from our grandmother's heart. The only thing in that place that still held any love. My fingers curled tight around it, like a lifeline. Then headlights swept across me. A sleek black sedan rolled up, windows sliding down. My cousin Mark, who'd seen the whole disaster from the corner of the family table, leaned out. Rachel, he called, eyes soft. Get in? You shouldn't walk away from them alone. I hesitated, but his face was kind, honest. I slid into the passenger seat, air warm against my frozen skin. He didn't ask me what happened, he'd seen enough. He just drove, calm and quiet, letting the city lights blur past like a mercy. You okay? He finally asked. I met his eyes, breathing steady now. Yeah, I answered, voice flat but clean. I'm done with begging to belong. He nodded, respect gleaming where pity might have been. We pulled away from their glittering, shallow party, leaving behind the table where they'd decided I was unworthy. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I had chosen myself, like I had saved something sacred they could never steal again. Mark drove with steady hands, the soft hum of the engine filling the silence like a blanket. The city rolled past, neon lights flickering against rain-washed asphalt, painting the world in bruised colors. I held that tiny gift bag in my lap, the weight of it somehow heavier than anything I'd ever carried. My grandmother's bracelet, all the memory, the love, the hope, they'd left it to me to protect. And now I wondered how I'd ever thought to hand it to a sister who couldn't spare me a plate. Mark's voice broke through my thoughts, low and calm. Where do you want to go? I swallowed, a lump rising in my throat. Home. He nodded without question. As the car curved through side streets, I stared out the window, replaying every look, every smug laugh, every cold shrug of my sister's shoulders. Guess you're not that important. Those words slice through me even now. I squeezed my fists, nails digging crescents into my palms, refusing to cry. Not tonight. When we pulled up to my apartment, Mark parked and turned to me. You know, he said, his tone almost gentle, you don't deserve the way they treat you. I looked at him, something hot and angry flashing in my chest. They've treated me like this since we were kids, I admitted. Like a spare part. Like background noise. He frowned. Then maybe it's time they learn you're not background anymore. The words landed like a match on dry kindling. I nodded, slow, feeling a spark catch fire inside me. I climbed out, the night air biting my cheeks, but I felt invincible somehow. Raw, sure, unstoppable. Inside my apartment, I set the bracelet down on my dresser. I stood over it, breathing, letting its quiet beauty remind me who I was before they taught me to shrink. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a new message. Can you come back? My sister's name glared at me from the screen. I read it calm. Then I placed my phone face down, refusing to answer. Because for once, she could sit in her discomfort. For once, she could wonder where I'd gone, what she'd broken, what she'd lost. And I would let her wait. The sun rose sharp the next morning, slicing through my blinds, catching on the bracelet like a spotlight. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone buzzing every few minutes with new messages. Come back, Rachel. Don't make this about you. You ruined everything. I read them in silence, my face carved from stone. Make this about me? They had made sure there was nothing for me at all. No seat. No plate. No place. I let the phone buzz until it went quiet, battery dying the way their excuses always would. A knock on my apartment door startled me, breaking through the heavy hush. I opened it to find Mark again, holding 2 paper coffee cups. His smile was warm, human. You sleep? He asked. Barely, I confessed. He held out the coffee, like a peace offering. Then let's go fix that. I took the cup, letting the bitter warmth steady my shaking hands. Mark leaned against the doorframe, studying me. They're never going to change, you know, he said quietly. People like that only learn when you stop letting them hurt you. I closed my eyes, letting his words settle. Then I'll stop, I said, surprising myself with how calm it sounded. He nodded.
Good.
You deserve to take up space. We left the apartment, walking down quiet streets, the city just beginning to wake. Every step felt like peeling away an old scab, raw but healing. I thought about the bracelet, about how it was supposed to be hers.
No.
It was ours, from a grandmother who had taught me love didn't come with conditions. I decided then I'd keep it, a promise to my younger self that I was worthy of something precious, something untarnished by their cruelty. Mark dropped me back later, squeezing my shoulder before he left. Call me if they bother you, he said. Family or not, you don't have to take their poison. I nodded, grateful, tears stinging but refusing to fall. Because I was done being their doormat. They had invited me to their table just to humiliate me, and now I would never sit at their table again. They could choke on their own pride, for all I cared. Because this was the first day I chose myself, and I would never let them take that from me again. Days passed, each one carving away a little more of the ache until only something stronger remained. I went back to work, back to living, letting the routine stitch me together. No calls from them. No more desperate messages. Silence. It was almost peaceful. I wore the bracelet one morning, letting its weight remind me who I was, who I had always been, someone who showed up, even when no one saved her a seat. That afternoon, I stepped out for coffee, sunlight catching in the gold links on my wrist. The cafe was buzzing, tables packed, and I waited in line with an ease I'd never known before. Then a voice behind me, too familiar, too sharp. Rachel. I turned slowly. My sister stood there, her graduation sash draped over her shoulder like a trophy. But the shine was gone from her face, replaced by something tight and desperate. "I've been trying to reach you," she said, brittle as glass. I raised a brow. I saw. She fidgeted, eyes darting around as if searching for sympathy. "Look, that night, it wasn't personal. There just wasn't space." I felt something in me laugh, dark and clean. "No space," I echoed. "At your family table." Her mouth opened, shut, then opened again. "You're making this dramatic," she snapped. I stared at her, calm as a knife. "You left me hungry on purpose. You made sure I knew where I ranked." Silence. For a heartbeat, the cafe felt so quiet, like the whole city was listening. Her shoulders sagged. "I didn't think you'd actually leave," she whispered. I took a slow sip of my coffee, heat blooming through my chest. "You didn't think I'd ever leave. That's the problem." She reached for my hand, eyes glassy. "I'm sorry, Rachel. I am." I looked down at her perfectly manicured nails, remembering every time she let me sit in the corner of her life, and felt nothing. "You can be sorry," I said gently, "but I'm not coming back." Her breath hitched, eyes wide, like a child losing a toy. Then I turned, walked away from her and her paper-thin apology, the bracelet on my wrist shining under the sun like armor. Because this was no longer her story. It was mine. The city felt brand new as I stepped back into the afternoon light, my sister's voice fading behind me like a bad dream. The sun seemed brighter, the air sharper, as if the universe was rewarding me for finally standing up. I walked with purpose, each footstep a refusal to ever again beg for a seat at a table that had no place for me. When I reached my apartment, I found Mark waiting by the door. One look at my face, and he read the entire story. "She found you," he guessed. I nodded, sliding the key into the lock. "She tried to pull me back," I said. He tilted his head. "And?" I smiled, a blade of hard-won calm. I walked away. His grin split across his face, pride shining clear. "Good," he murmured. "About damn time." Inside, I set the coffee down and caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. For a second, I barely recognized the woman staring back, chin lifted, eyes bright, heartbreak turned to steel. Mark stepped up behind me, quiet. "You know," he said, "you don't have to keep carrying their shame." "I'm not," I replied, voice ringing sure. "It's theirs now." He nodded, satisfied, then pulled something from his pocket. An envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "Your share of Grandma's estate," he said. "I found out she meant for you to have it. They kept it from you." My heart thudded, rage and wonder tangling together. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. A trust fund, enough to start a new life, hidden away from me all these years. My sister had known. My brother-in-law had known. They'd left me scrambling, scraping by, while they hoarded this final gift. I felt the last thread of loyalty snap. "This is mine," I said, gripping the paper. "All yours," Mark confirmed. "She'd want you to use it. To live." I looked around my apartment, small and worn but mine, and felt a strange, defiant joy bloom in my chest. I could leave. I could build something new, somewhere no one would dare tell me I wasn't enough. I closed my eyes, breathing it in. Freedom. The kind that no one could steal again. That night, I spread the documents across my kitchen table, the numbers almost too big to process. A trust fund, invested and preserved, waiting for me all these years. While they fed me scraps, made me believe I was less, reminded me I didn't deserve a plate. Mark sat opposite, calm, letting me take it all in. "They knew," I whispered, rage building like a tide inside my chest. "They knew, and they still humiliated me." He nodded, steady. "They can't touch it now." I looked down at my hands, trembling, remembering every time I'd counted coins for bus fare, Every time I'd gone without just so my sister could shine. Not anymore. I reached for my phone, scrolled past the unread messages from my sister, and dialed the lawyer's number instead. Set up a transfer, I told him. I'm moving. His voice was brisk and professional. Where to, Ms. Rachel? I closed my eyes, saw wide skies, quiet streets, a place no one knew me by the damage they'd done. Somewhere new, I answered. A fresh start. Mark smiled across the table, proud. You're really doing it. I nodded, a strange, reckless joy lighting me up inside. I'm done begging for their scraps. He raised his glass of water like a toast. To not begging. We clinked our glasses together, the moment small but powerful. That night, as I packed a single suitcase, I placed the bracelet in a soft velvet pouch. It would come with me, a reminder of a woman, my grandmother, who had loved me without conditions. The rest? I left behind. No sister's photos, no pity-lace mementos, no half-hearted apologies. I left her with exactly what she had offered me that night. Nothing. As I zipped my bag shut, the world felt wide, endless, and finally mine. Because if they wouldn't make space for me, I'd make my own table, with enough seats for every dream they tried to crush. And I would never, ever let them pull me back into their poison again. The morning I left, dawn cracked open like a promise, pale gold light spilling across my bare apartment walls. I stood there one last time, suitcase in hand, breathing in the silence, a silence that felt like peace instead of punishment. My phone buzzed again, one last desperate text from my sister. You can't just walk away. We're family. Family. The word rang hollow, like a cheap bell.
I didn't reply.
Instead, I slipped my grandmother's bracelet around my wrist, letting its quiet weight remind me that love didn't have to come dressed in cruelty. Mark was waiting by the curb, engine idling, ready to drive me to the airport. He stepped out as I locked the door behind me, eyes shining with something fierce and proud. You sure? He asked. I nodded. For the first time in my life, I'm sure. We loaded my bag in the trunk, and I glanced back just once, at the building where I'd learned how to survive, how to stand alone, how to rise. No tears. No regrets. Just freedom. On the highway, the city blurred behind me. Every mile felt like a clean page, a chance to rewrite my story far from their cheap applause and empty seats. Mark glanced over, voice warm. Wherever you land, he said, they'll never break you again. I smiled, a slow, unshakable smile. No, I agreed. They won't, because I would build a home where no one had to beg for space, where no one went hungry for love, where I could finally take a full breath without feeling unworthy. When the plane took off, I watched the ground fall away, felt the pull in my chest, not fear this time, but something close to hope. I closed my eyes, letting the sun touch my face through the window. They had left me starving, but I had learned to feed myself. And this time, I would never let them take another bite out of me. Shut your mouth and stay out of our family matters. My dad's voice echoed through the apartment as he tightened the bolts on the new sofa, sweat dripping down his forehead. My sister sat on the floor, scrolling through her phone, while her kids ran around, oblivious to the chaos they caused. Suddenly, without warning, Dad stormed into my room, grabbed my suitcase, and hurled it into the hallway, scattering my belongings everywhere. Useless fellow, don't come here again, he bellowed, pointing aggressively toward the open door. My name is Maya, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever felt like an outsider in your own family? Like the air you breathe is a privilege they grant you? I stood there frozen, humiliation tightening my chest as neighbors poked their heads out of their doors, whispering and shaking their heads. I wanted to scream, to fight back, but the weight of shame kept me silent. Dad had always been harsh, but today he crossed a line I didn't know existed until this moment. I'm sorry, I whispered quietly, bending down to gather my scattered clothes. My sister looked up briefly from her phone, then returned to scrolling as if I was invisible, irrelevant. Her silence stung deeper than Dad's words ever could. My mother appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands with a stained towel. Her eyes flickered toward me, disappointment etched deep into her face. You shouldn't upset your father, Maya. He's under enough stress as it is. The familiar ache of betrayal burned inside me. Always the problem, never the solution. That was my role in their lives. I finished packing quickly, refusing to let them see my tears, and turned toward the door. As I stepped outside, the cold air hit me hard, emphasizing just how alone I truly was. But then, as I stood helplessly staring at the spilled contents of my life scattered across the hallway, footsteps echoed loudly from the stairwell. The voices in the apartment quieted, the whispers of neighbors faded, and a tall figure emerged from around the corner. My heart froze as recognition dawned on me. It was Alex, my childhood best friend, the one person I'd always tried to shield from the chaos of my family life. The one who moved away years ago and swore never to come back to this place. What's going on here? Alex's voice was calm yet firm, carrying the authority that immediately silenced the room behind me. My dad stepped out, still gripping his wrench tightly, defiance in his eyes. Family matter, Alex. Doesn't concern you. Alex's eyes narrowed, unwavering. Anything involving Maya concerns me, especially when her dignity is involved. I felt the warmth of relief wash over me, battling against my humiliation. Alex bent down beside me, gently collecting my belongings. This isn't how you treat someone who's sacrificed everything for your comfort, Alex said sharply, addressing my father without even looking at him. My father's face turned crimson. My sister finally lifted her gaze, uncomfortable under Alex's piercing stare. Come on, Alex whispered to me, handing me the last shirt from the floor. You deserve better than this. As we turned away, leaving my stunned family behind, I felt something shift inside me. It was subtle but powerful, the first spark of strength. They thought they had silenced me forever, but they were wrong. Because now I finally had someone in my corner. And that changed everything. Alex guided me gently out of the building and into the crisp evening air. Every step away from that suffocating apartment loosened the knots tightening in my chest, yet the echoes of humiliation lingered stubbornly in my heart. You okay? Alex finally asked, breaking the silence that hung heavy between us. I swallowed hard, staring down at the cracked pavement beneath my feet. Define okay. Alex nodded, understanding without me having to elaborate. I remember how it was growing up. The shouting, the unfair expectations, your endless apologies for things that weren't your fault. It never sat right with me. My throat tightened, memories flooding back in relentless waves. For as long as I could recall, I'd existed only in shadows, tiptoeing around my family's unpredictable moods. My sister, Elena, had always been the favored child, the golden one who could do no wrong. Her mistakes were excused as youthful mishaps, while my smallest errors were evidence of inherent flaws. You know, I began softly, when Mom got sick a few years ago, Dad insisted I quit college to care for her. Elena said she had her own life and couldn't help. I didn't even hesitate, Alex. I left everything, my dreams, my future, to be there. I bathed Mom, fed her, stayed awake through the long nights when she cried from pain. Alex stopped walking, turning to face me, their eyes filled with sympathy and anger. And they still treat you like this? I laughed bitterly, the sound hollow in my ears. When Mom recovered, she thanked Elena for her emotional support. Dad praised her resilience, told her she was a hero for dealing with so much stress. And me? I was just the obedient caretaker. Expected. Not appreciated. Alex shook their head in disgust. They've always been blind to your worth, Maya. You've spent your entire life giving to people who can't see past themselves. I sighed deeply, memories resurfacing painfully. I used to think if I just did more, tried harder, they'd see me. I cleaned the house, cooked meals, babysat Elena's kids for free, hoping one day they'd notice I was there, trying to earn their love. But love isn't supposed to feel like this. Alex gently touched my shoulder, a comforting warmth radiating from their hand. You're right. Love isn't transactional. It's not conditional. And it sure as hell doesn't humiliate you. I nodded, the truth of their words hitting deep. Tonight wasn't even the worst, Alex. It was just another night, another reminder. My voice trembled as I recounted the endless cycle of emotional blows, the quiet dismissals, the casual insults masked as jokes, and the times I was made invisible at family gatherings, told to remain silent and not embarrass them. I think the saddest part, I whispered, looking directly into Alex's compassionate eyes, is realizing I'd started believing them, believing I really was useless, pathetic, a burden. Alex took my hand firmly, squeezing reassuringly. You're none of those things, Maya. You're kind, strong, resilient. You're someone who deserves respect and love, not this. I exhaled slowly, the weight of years finally shifting. Alex was the first person to genuinely see me, to see past the lies I'd been told about myself. You know, Alex said quietly, their voice steady, you don't owe them your silence or your forgiveness. They've made you feel small because they fear what you'll become if you realize how powerful you actually are. A spark ignited within me, tiny, fragile, but undeniably present. I'm done being their doormat. Alex smiled warmly, pride shimmering in their eyes. Then let's show them exactly who you can be. Tonight marked the beginning of something new. My family believed they had silenced me, shattered me into submission. But they were about to learn just how loudly I could roar. Over the next few days, Alex helped me settle into their small, cozy apartment, miles away from the emotional debris of my old life. I spent hours sifting through job listings and reworking my neglected resume, determined to rebuild the dignity my family had shredded. But even as I tried to move forward, unsettling truths lingered in the back of my mind. It started with a simple notification on my phone, a credit alert. Your card ending in 3498 was charged $850. My stomach twisted. My father still had access to that account, a leftover from when I managed household expenses. Anger bubbled through me, followed swiftly by suspicion. What's wrong? Alex asked, noticing my tense expression. My dad, I muttered bitterly, eyes fixed on my phone. He just spent almost $1,000 on my credit card. Alex frowned deeply, concern flickering in their eyes. You still have joint accounts? I sighed, frustration seeping through my voice. I was stupid enough to believe they'd be responsible. I trusted they'd never abuse it. Another mistake. Alex leaned closer, their voice gentle but firm. Maya, you need to cut those ties immediately. They're clearly taking advantage of you. I nodded slowly, realization washing over me like ice water. For years, I'd accepted being exploited emotionally. Now, staring at this blatant financial betrayal, I finally recognized how deeply their disrespect ran. It wasn't just about feelings. They'd built their comfort on my sacrifices, always counting on my silence. Determined, I spent the afternoon closing shared accounts and changing passwords, each step feeling liberating. But as I secured my financial independence, deeper suspicions arose. Dad had always insisted our family was barely scraping by, yet he'd just purchased expensive furniture for Elena, using my money. I couldn't shake the sense there was more hidden beneath the surface. Late that night, sleep eluded me. Restless, I dug through old emails and documents I'd long ignored, hunting for anything suspicious. Within minutes, my pulse quickened. An unopened email from a bank I'd never used caught my eye. My hands trembled as I clicked it open. Congratulations, Ms. Maya Reed. Your new joint account with Mr. Robert Reed has been successfully created. Current balance, $18,250. My breath stalled in disbelief. Dad had opened an account, using my name, my identity, my credit. He'd hidden money, likely siphoned from the family funds I'd managed, into an account I had no knowledge of. My heart pounded furiously as betrayal morphed into something darker, recognition. The pieces snapped into place, my forced silence, their harsh dismissals, the relentless humiliation. It had all been carefully orchestrated to keep me powerless and unaware. If I doubted myself, I'd never question them. Alex emerged sleepily from their room, sensing something wrong. Maya, Why are you still awake? Tears blurred my vision, but anger sharpened my voice. They stole from me, Alex. More than money. They stole my trust, my dignity, my future. Alex crossed the room instantly, embracing me tightly as sobs shook my body. They'll never hurt you again, they whispered fiercely. We're going to expose everything. In that moment, clarity crystallized within me. My family thrived on deceit, manipulation, and my perpetual silence. They treated me as disposable, a means to their selfish ends. But no more. I wiped my tears, jaw tightening with newfound resolve. I'm going to dismantle every lie they've built. I'm taking back everything they've stolen. Alex nodded solemnly, eyes burning with determination matching mine. I'll help you. We'll plan this carefully. They taught me silence. Now I would teach them accountability. My family was about to learn a lesson they'd never forget. Over the next few weeks, Alex and I meticulously crafted our plan. Every step had to be precise, subtle, and devastating, just as their betrayal had been. For the first time in my life, I channeled my pain into clarity, transforming my anger into cold, strategic resolve. The first step was clear: documentation. Late nights became our sanctuary, hunched over laptops, piecing together every hidden truth from the web of lies. I uncovered accounts in my name I never opened, credit cards maxed out on purchases I'd never made, loans taken under my identity, and even insurance policies naming my family as beneficiaries without my consent. Each discovery sharpened my determination and fortified my anger. One evening, as the clock ticked toward midnight, I stared numbly at another newly unearthed loan, $25,000 borrowed against my identity. My father's signature mocked me from the screen, confident and bold. How could they? I whispered, voice shaking from anger and disbelief. Alex, sitting beside me, gently squeezed my shoulder. Because they never expected you to fight back. They've always underestimated you, Maya. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Then, let's make sure that's their biggest mistake. The second step of the plan required careful maneuvering. I contacted a lawyer, Rachel, who specialized in identity fraud and financial abuse. Rachel was compassionate yet fiercely competent, promising she'd guide me every step of the way. The more evidence you gather, Rachel advised, the stronger your case will be when we file charges. We need this airtight. So I waited, gathering silent ammunition, credit statements, signed documents, surveillance footage from banks showing my father confidently forging my name, even emails exchanged between Elena and Dad discussing how to keep me unaware. Each revelation felt like a fresh wound, but every piece made me stronger. Meanwhile, life continued outwardly normal. My family believed I'd quietly disappeared into insignificance. Occasionally, Dad sent condescending texts reminding me I owed them for years of accommodation. Elena would casually demand babysitting favors, as if nothing had changed. I ignored them, responding minimally, playing along while Alex and I built our invisible fortress of evidence. Step 3 was the quietest but most crucial: securing financial safety. With Rachel's help, I systematically froze unauthorized accounts, disputed fraudulent charges, and contacted credit bureaus to flag identity theft. Each step dismantled my family's illusion of control, brick by brick. Finally, the night before confronting them directly, Alex and I sat silently, the weight of everything between us. Are you ready? Alex asked softly, breaking the stillness. I exhaled slowly, meeting their gaze firmly. More than ready. I'm done letting them define who I am. Alex smiled gently. When we walk into that house tomorrow, they'll finally see the Maya I've always known, the strongest person I've ever met. Their words settled warmly within me, igniting courage. Tomorrow wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming the dignity they had stolen, reclaiming myself. That night, sleep came surprisingly easy. I dreamed vividly of standing tall before my father, fearless and unshaken, finally silencing his cruel words forever. When morning broke, sunlight poured through Alex's curtains, bathing the room in gold, a perfect day to reclaim my truth. I dressed carefully, every choice deliberate, a sharp suit, hair pulled confidently back, shoulders straight. I stared into the mirror, seeing strength, resilience, and something I'd long forgotten, worth. Alex handed me a folder thick with proof, eyes filled with unwavering support. You've got this. I took the folder firmly, feeling its comforting weight. My family's lies had thrived in shadows. Now they would be dragged into the light. Today was the day I became their reckoning. When we arrived at my family's apartment, my pulse hammered with a blend of anxiety and anticipation. I stood before the familiar door, folder clutched tightly in my trembling hands. Alex placed a reassuring palm against my back, steadying me. You're ready, Alex whispered softly. I nodded firmly and knocked, 3 sharp, determined taps. The door opened to reveal my father, his smug confidence dissolving into confusion when he saw me standing tall beside Alex. Maya? What's this about? He sneered, attempting dominance immediately. Accountability, I answered calmly, stepping firmly inside, Alex close behind. The living room fell into tense silence as my mother and Elena looked up from the sofa, their expressions shifting from surprise to mild irritation. Elena's kids paused their noisy play, sensing the heavy tension crackling through the air. What do you think you're doing barging in like this? Elena scoffed, her voice dripping with disdain. Dad already told you, stay out. I ignored her venom, focusing solely on my father, my voice sharp but composed. I'm here because you've crossed a line that even you can't erase. Dad's eyes narrowed threateningly. Don't be dramatic. If this is about money, we'll talk later. No, I interrupted, voice clear and unwavering. We talk now. Without waiting for his permission, I spread the folder open on the coffee table, revealing a meticulously compiled stack of evidence, credit statements, loan documents, forged signatures, every ugly truth laid bare in bold black ink. My father paled visibly, realization crashing into him like a wave. What's going on? Mom whispered, suddenly afraid, eyes darting between Dad and me. This, I pointed forcefully to the documents, is every account you've opened in my name, every loan you've illegally taken, every piece of my identity you've stolen. Elena shifted uncomfortably, her bravado faltering. Maya, this must be some misunderstanding. No misunderstandings, I snapped sharply. Just lies. And crimes. Dad clenched his jaw tightly, his eyes furious yet desperate. You've misunderstood. These were just temporary solutions to family needs. You've always been so dramatic, Maya. I leaned forward, eyes blazing with strength I'd never known. I quit school, worked tirelessly to support this family, sacrificed my dreams for your comfort. And you repaid me by stealing my identity? By humiliating me, making me feel worthless, and then daring to blame me? Dad's face flushed crimson, his fists clenched as he realized he'd lost control. Watch your tone, he hissed weakly. Alex stepped forward, voice calm yet piercing. She doesn't owe you respect anymore. You've stolen enough from her. Dad glared at Alex, finally sensing his defeat. This is none of your business. Alex met his glare steadily. It became my business the moment you threw Maya out like trash. Mom's voice trembled. What are you planning to do, Maya? I straightened my spine, every word deliberate. I'm pressing charges. Identity theft, financial fraud, emotional abuse documented by professionals. You'll face every consequence. Dad sank onto the sofa, visibly shaken, Elena pale beside him. You can't do this, he muttered weakly. I leaned closer, eyes locked onto his. You made me believe I was worthless. But I'm worth more than you ever imagined. You used my silence as your shield, but I won't stay silent anymore. Alex gently touched my shoulder, signaling it was time. I stood tall, facing the people who'd tried to erase me. You built your world on my back. But now it's collapsing, and you only have yourselves to blame. I turned confidently toward the door, leaving the broken silence behind me. Alex followed, closing the door firmly, a symbolic end to the past I'd left inside. As we stepped into the sunlight, a heavy weight lifted from my chest, replaced by strength and clarity. Finally, the tables had turned, and I was no longer the victim, but the victor. In the days following my confrontation, my family's world quickly unraveled. News of my father's fraud spread rapidly through our community. Neighbors who'd once turned their backs, whispering judgmental gossip at my humiliation, now gawked openly at the spectacle of his downfall. I watched from a distance, feeling no joy in their suffering, only a grim sense of justice. The evidence I'd gathered, meticulously reviewed by my lawyer Rachel, proved devastatingly conclusive. Investigators arrived swiftly, seizing paperwork, freezing accounts, and systematically dismantling the financial empire my father had built on stolen identities, mine included. Alex and I sat together one rainy afternoon, sipping coffee and quietly watching the news unfold on my laptop screen. Dad's face flashed across local news websites beneath harsh, condemning headlines. Local man faces charges of fraud and identity theft. Father arrested after daughter's shocking revelations. My heart twisted slightly, not in pity, but at the sheer magnitude of how far he'd fallen. I'd spent my entire life viewing him as untouchable, a powerful, controlling force I'd never dared defy. But seeing him now, handcuffed and humbled, I felt a strange emptiness where fear once lived. "You okay?" Alex asked softly, noticing my quiet reflection. I sighed deeply, nodding slowly. "It's strange. I've dreamed of this moment, but now that it's here, all I feel is relief. Relief that he can't hurt me anymore." Alex gently squeezed my hand. "You're finally free, Maya. He doesn't hold power over you now." Elena called me frantically that evening, her voice choked with panic. "Maya, what have you done?" "They've frozen everything. My accounts, Mom's savings, everything. My kids." "Elena," I interrupted calmly but firmly, my voice unwavering, "your kids deserve better than lies and theft. You knew what was happening and chose silence." "But I'm your sister," she pleaded desperately. "Yes," I answered quietly. "And that's exactly why your betrayal hurt even more." She fell silent, finally comprehending the depth of her complicity. I didn't realize how bad. "You never wanted to," I said, voice trembling slightly. "You all made it so easy to ignore me." I hung up gently, feeling both sadness and closure. They'd ignored my cries for years, silenced my pain, mocked my attempts to matter. Now, when their comfortable lies crumbled, they desperately demanded empathy they'd never given me. My phone buzzed again. Mom this time, her voice broken, barely recognizable. "Maya, please reconsider. We're losing everything." I swallowed hard, refusing to waver. "You lost me first, Mom. You just didn't care enough to notice." I ended the call, heart aching yet oddly serene. Years of silent suffering had taught me strength. They'd intended to break me, yet ironically forged me into steel. Days later, I stood silently in the courtroom as the charges were formally read against my father: fraud, forgery, identity theft, financial abuse. He stood stoically, unable to look at me, finally stripped of his manipulative pride. The judge's words rang clearly, delivering the justice I'd once thought impossible. "You betrayed trust, exploited innocence, and showed no remorse. The court finds you guilty." I exhaled slowly, tension finally releasing from my shoulders. Alex stood beside me, steadfast and supportive as always. As Dad was escorted from the courtroom, our eyes met briefly. For the first time, his gaze held no threat, no disdain, only defeated emptiness. I felt no satisfaction, only quiet closure. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored around us, their questions blending into meaningless noise. Alex shielded me gently, guiding me toward the waiting car. Once inside, the silence comforted me, wrapping around me like a warm blanket. I leaned my head against the window, rain trickling down the glass, washing away years of pain. My family's world had shattered completely, collapsing under the weight of their own cruelty. But mine was finally beginning, rebuilt on truth, strength, and freedom. With the toxic foundation of my old life finally demolished, I turned my energy toward creating something genuinely mine, something built from truth, respect, and purpose. Every step forward felt like reclaiming stolen parts of myself, filling the void they'd left with strength I never knew existed. Alex and I moved into a modest but beautiful new apartment downtown, far from the shadows of the past. Sunlight streamed through large windows, illuminating bare walls that soon filled with photos of laughter, joy, and peace. I found work quickly, an administrative job at a women's shelter that empowered survivors of abuse and financial exploitation. Each day spent there was deeply healing, giving purpose to my past pain. Weeks turned to months, and my confidence grew steadily. The quiet girl who once believed she was worthless had transformed into a woman who spoke clearly, acted deliberately, and never again allowed others to define her value. I counseled women who'd suffered as I had, watching with pride as they reclaimed their own voices, inspired by my journey. One evening after work, Alex surprised me with a small celebration, candles, flowers, and a home-cooked dinner. "What's all this?" I asked, laughing softly as I entered our apartment, warmth blossoming in my chest. Alex smiled broadly, handing me an envelope embossed with gold lettering. "Open it." Curious, I tore the envelope open, pulling out a crisp certificate, acceptance into the Women's Advocacy and Leadership Program. "I applied secretly," Alex explained gently, eyes shining with pride. "I knew you'd be perfect." My heart swelled, tears pricking my eyes as I stared at the document. I never imagined I'd be someone who could lead others. Alex shook their head gently, sincerity glowing in their eyes. "Maya, you've always been a leader. Your family just worked hard to make you forget. This is who you've always meant to be." I embraced Alex tightly, gratitude washing over me. The program offered specialized training in advocacy, law, and public speaking, skills I'd once thought beyond my reach, now perfectly aligned with my newfound purpose. The following months passed quickly, filled with late-night study sessions, challenging courses, and deeply rewarding community work. I learned not just about advocacy, but about myself, my capacity for empathy, resilience, and strength. Speaking at events became second nature, my voice ringing clear and confident as I empowered others to break free from their own cages of silence. News of my success spread quietly but steadily. Unexpectedly, Elena reached out again, her voice subdued yet sincere. "Maya, I've been watching you," she began hesitantly. "Everything you're doing, it's inspiring." I paused, guarded yet curious. "Why call now, Elena?" She sighed deeply, vulnerability creeping into her tone. "I was jealous of your strength, afraid to admit how cruel we'd been. But seeing you rise, it's taught me courage. I'm finally leaving, Maya. Leaving Dad's shadow, leaving the lies." Her admission surprised me, stirring complex emotions. "I'm glad," I said softly, meaning every word. "It won't be easy, Elena, but freedom never is." "I know," she whispered gratefully. "Maybe one day I'll earn your forgiveness." After we hung up, I sat quietly, reflecting. Elena had a long path ahead, but her step toward honesty felt oddly comforting. Perhaps my courage had rippled outward, challenging others to confront their truths. Later that evening, Alex found me lost in thought. "Everything okay?" I smiled warmly, nodding gently. "Better than okay. I'm finally at peace." Alex squeezed my hand, silent support filling the comfortable quiet between us. I'd been shattered, silenced, and nearly erased, but now I'd rebuilt myself, stronger than ever, leading others toward their own freedom. My family had tried to define me by weakness, but I'd chosen to rise. I had reclaimed my voice, my dignity, and my future, and no one could ever take that from me again. Nearly a year after the night my father threw my belongings into that cold hallway, I stood confidently at the podium of a crowded community center, my heart steady, my spirit strong. Around me, faces glowed with anticipation. Women I'd counseled, community leaders, even some former neighbors who'd once witnessed my humiliation and now eagerly awaited my voice. My eyes scanned the audience, and then I saw her, my mother, sitting quietly in the back row, a shadow of the proud woman I'd known. Elena sat beside her, eyes wide with uncertain hope. Their presence startled me momentarily, but I quickly steadied myself, breathing deeply. Their eyes carried regret, understanding, and perhaps the first genuine respect they'd ever shown me. I spoke clearly, voice unwavering as I recounted my journey. Painful truths mingled with triumphant victories. I described the dark moments of betrayal, humiliation, and emotional abuse. Yet I also spoke of strength, resilience, and ultimately redemption. Some people thrive by convincing you that you're nothing, I said firmly, my voice filling every corner of the room. They silence you because they fear the power you hold when you finally speak. Eyes glistened with recognition and tears around the room. My mother's had dropped slightly, shoulders trembling gently. Elena looked directly at me, openly weeping, her regret palpable. But your worth doesn't diminish because others refuse to see it, I continued softly. You deserve love, respect, dignity. Not because you earn them, but because you simply exist. Applause filled the room, thunderous and heartfelt. When I stepped down from the podium, hands reached out gratefully, hugs tight with shared pain and hope. Slowly, the crowd dispersed until only my mother and Elena remained, lingering hesitantly near the exit. I approached slowly, meeting their anxious gazes calmly. I didn't expect you here. My mother's eyes filled with remorse. We owed you this much. Maya, I should have protected you. You should have. I agreed gently but firmly. You should have stood by me. You should have seen me. But you didn't. Her face crumpled slightly, guilt etched deeply into her eyes. I'm so sorry. I exhaled slowly, feeling something inside me finally release, resentment dissolving into compassion. I forgive you. Not because you've earned it, but because I refuse to carry this pain any longer. My mother nodded quietly, understanding the weight of my words. Elena stepped forward, her voice trembling slightly. Can we ever rebuild, Maya? I paused, choosing my words carefully. Maybe. But it won't look like before. It has to be based on truth, respect, and honesty. No more silence, no more pretending. Elena nodded earnestly. I promise. As they left quietly, I felt lighter than ever, finally closing that chapter. Turning, I saw Alex standing nearby, watching me with gentle pride. You're incredible, Alex whispered, pulling me into a comforting embrace. Later, as we walked slowly home beneath a starlit sky, Alex glanced at me curiously. How do you feel? I smiled softly, breathing deeply. Free. At home, I stood in front of the mirror, reflecting on everything I'd overcome. The girl I'd once been, quiet, obedient, invisible, no longer stared back. Instead, I saw a woman shaped by pain, yet strengthened by her fight. They'd thrown me away, believing I'd never rise. But here I stood, stronger than ever, my voice loud, clear, and unapologetic. They once told me to shut my mouth and stay out of family matters, but I learned the most powerful revenge wasn't silence, bitterness, or anger. It was becoming everything they'd feared I could be, strong, proud, respected, and free. As I closed my eyes that night, peace enveloped me like a comforting blanket, washing away the last remnants of pain. Their cruelty had nearly destroyed me, but my courage saved me, and that was my sweetest revenge.